Breaking news. Coco Gauff knelt before a cleaning lady on the court, and that moment brought millions of tennis fans around the world to tears. After her
Breaking. Coco Gauff saves janitor from being fired. You won't believe what was in her wallet. 15 minutes ago, the tennis world was flipped upside down, not by a backhand, not by a serve, and not by a trophy lift, but by an act of kindness so shocking, so raw, and so incredibly human, that it is literally melting the internet right now. If you think you know Coco Gauff, think again. We know her as the prodigy, the Grand Slam champion, the girl who took down Venus Williams at Wimbledon. But what happened just hours ago in the hidden corridors of a VIP airport lounge has revealed a side of Coco that no camera on center court could ever capture. We are talking about a lost wallet stuffed with $50,000 in cold hard cash. We are talking about a 57-year-old grandmother on her knees, scrubbing floors, terrified of losing her livelihood. And we are talking about a confrontation with a corporate CEO that ended with the stroke of a pen that changed a family's destiny forever. Grab your tissues, Champions Tennisitics family. You are not ready for this story. This is the moment Coco Gauff didn't just save a match point, she saved a life. Welcome back to Champions Tennisitics, your #1 source for the heart, the soul, and the drama of the tennis world. If you love stories that restore your faith in humanity, smash that like button right now. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and ring that bell. You do not want to miss what we have coming next. Let's set the scene. It's February 2026. The tennis world is currently focused on the Middle East. The Qatar Total Energies Open is kicking off in Doha. The stakes are high. Now, to understand the weight of this story, you have to understand where Coco Gauff's head is at right now. Just a couple of weeks ago, she suffered a heartbreaking loss at the Australian Open. She went out in the quarterfinals to Alina Svitolina. It was brutal. Her ranking slid to world number 5. Critics were whispering, is she distracted? Is the pressure too much? The media was circling, waiting for a meltdown. But while the cameras were focused on her forehand, Coco was quietly focusing on something much bigger. This story begins in the VIP transit area of a major international airport, a place of luxury, high fashion, and hurried travelers. Coco, exhausted from the travel schedule, was moving between flights. In the chaos of security checks, autographs, and handling her team, a small, unassuming leather wallet slipped unnoticed from her bag. This wasn't just a card holder. This was a travel wallet containing over $50,000 in cash, emergency team funds, travel contingencies, the kind of money that could change a normal person's life instantly. And it sat there, alone, on a plush leather seat. Enter Mrs. Elena Rodriguez. We've changed her name to protect her privacy, but her story is very real. Elena is 57 years old. She is a Mexican immigrant who has spent the last 20 years becoming invisible. She is the woman who mops the floors you walk on. She empties the bins you ignore. She cleans the mirrors you check your reflection in. But life had dealt Elena a hand that would break most of us. Recently, tragedy struck her family in the cruelest way possible. Her daughter passed away, leaving behind 4 children. 4 beautiful, terrified, orphan grandchildren. Elena, at 57, wasn't looking forward to retirement. She was suddenly the only thing standing between 4 kids and the foster care system. She was working double shifts, her back aching, her knees swelling, just to put food on the table. And yet, and this is the part that stopped the world, when the final point was won and the match was over, all of that ferocious competitive fire melted away in an instant. Coco didn't head straight for her team. She walked toward the tunnel, and there, in the ordinary, unnoticed corner of the arena's edge, stood the janitor. And she knelt, and the world watched, stunned into silence, and then into tears, and then into thunderous applause. Now, for those of you who are loyal, dedicated Chatterbox viewers, and if you are not subscribed yet, what on earth are you doing? Hit that button right now. You might already know that this was not a completely isolated incident. This was, in many ways, a window into who Coco Gauff actually is when the cameras are not pointing directly at her. Back at the 2025 US Open, Coco specifically made headlines for going out of her way to thank the janitorial and facilities staff during her post-match press conferences, saying, and this is a direct quote that the internet never stopped talking about, that having the stadium workers rooting for her every 5 steps meant the absolute world to her. In a sport that has historically been defined by privilege and elitism, where players are treated like royalty and the people who make the venues function are often rendered invisible, Coco Gauff sees the invisible people. She always has. And in that moment at the 2026 Australian Open, she made sure that at least one of those invisible people felt, for one unforgettable moment, completely and utterly seen. The video of the moment spread across the internet faster than almost any sports clip in recent memory. It was shared by athletes across every sport imaginable: basketball players, soccer stars, Olympic champions, all posting the same sentiment. This is what class actually looks like. Tennis legends who had been largely quiet on social media for months suddenly came out to say something. Tennis journalists who cover this sport for a living admitted they had not seen anything quite like it. And ordinary fans from every corner of the planet flooded Coco's social media with messages so heartfelt and personal that her team reportedly couldn't keep up with reading them all. The story even caught fire in mainstream news outlets that don't typically cover tennis at all, because what they recognized was that this wasn't a tennis story. It was a human story. It was a story about what it means to remember where gratitude belongs. But here is where the story of the 2026 Australian Open gets deeply, uncomfortably, dramatically complicated. Because the tennis gods, as any fan of this sport knows, are spectacularly indifferent to narrative convenience. They do not care that you just had the most beautiful, heartwarming moment in the history of the tournament. They do not care that millions of people are rooting for you. And they absolutely do not care that the media is already building you up as the story of the tournament. Fast forward just a few days from that heavenly moment with the janitor, and Coco Gauff walked out onto the iconic Rod Laver Arena for her quarterfinal match against the Ukrainian powerhouse Elena Svitolina. And what followed was one of the most brutal, humbling, difficult-to-watch collapses of her career. Svitolina was playing out of her mind. She had been riding a massive winning streak coming into the tournament and showed absolutely no signs of slowing down. She was aggressive, relentless, physically imposing, and mentally unshakable. And unfortunately for Coco, catastrophically for Coco, none of the magic that had carried her through that extraordinary third-round comeback was present. Her serve, already her acknowledged weakness, did not just falter. It disintegrated entirely. The errors piled up at a pace that was almost surreal to witness. Svitolina's winners came from everywhere, from every angle, with a consistency that felt almost unfair. The match lasted just 59 minutes. The scoreline read 6-1, 6-2. It was not a loss. It was a demolition. It was the kind of result that makes a player question everything, that strips away all the beauty and grace of the day before and replaces it with the raw, horrible sting of sporting failure. And here is where the story takes a turn into genuinely explosive territory, the kind of turn that has had the entire professional tennis world at each other's throats for the past week. Coco, feeling the full weight of that crushing, humiliating defeat, did what any normal, emotionally overwhelmed human being would instinctively do. She retreated. She needed a moment. Not in front of the cameras. Not in front of the kids who look up to her and model their behavior on hers. Not in front of the thousands of fans still filing out of Rod Laver Arena. She found what she believed to be a secluded spot, deep in the backstage corridors of the arena, hidden behind a wall, far from the bright lights and the watchful eyes. And there, believing with every reasonable fiber of her being that she was completely alone and completely private, she let it out. She smashed her racket against the concrete floor, over and over and over. A raw, desperate, entirely human release of the crushing, unbearable pressure she had been living under for 2 weeks straight. She thought she was alone. She was dead wrong. The Australian Open organizers had installed hidden, behind-the-scenes cameras throughout the backstage areas of the tournament facility. Cameras that players had not been clearly informed about. Cameras that were capturing every single private moment that occurred in those corridors throughout the event. The footage of Coco's meltdown was captured in full, and then it was broadcast to the world. Immediately, within hours, it was everywhere, every sports network, every tabloid website, every social media platform. Broadcasters who should have known better called her a crybaby on live television. Tabloids that had been celebrating her grace and humanity just days before now gleefully shredded her apart with the same energy. The contrast was jarring, ugly, and almost too on the nose to be real. The woman who had brought the world to tears with her compassion was now being publicly mocked for the very private human emotions she had desperately tried to protect others from witnessing. The fallout from this moment has been, by any measure, absolutely explosive, and it shows absolutely no signs of dying down. Coco Gauff did not stay quiet. She came out swinging, and she had every right to. In a statement that quickly became one of the most discussed pieces of athlete commentary in recent tennis history, Coco publicly slammed the Australian Open and its broadcast partners, making the key point with crystalline, infuriating clarity. She specifically sought out a place without cameras precisely because she did not want to set a bad example on the court. She was not hiding from accountability. She was not trying to deceive anyone. She was actively trying to be responsible about her emotional response by taking it somewhere private. And the tournament responded by making that private moment public without her consent. She went further, making a point that has resonated deeply across the entire sporting world and beyond. Athletes are real people with real emotions, and the only genuinely private space left in the entire Australian Open facility, at this point, is the locker room itself. And the implication of that statement is deeply uncomfortable. If the backstage corridors are not safe, if the private hallways are not safe, if every corner of the venue is fair game for broadcast without player consent or knowledge, then what does that say about how these tournaments actually view the human beings who make their events possible and profitable? The answer to that question, apparently, is they view them as content. They view them as entertainment product. They view them as the furious words of the world's #2 player would soon make clear, like animals in a zoo. Because that is exactly what Iga Swiatek said. The Polish world #2, one of the most respected voices in the entire sport, was absolutely incandescent with rage over the backstage camera situation. She did not mince words. She did not offer diplomatic hedging. She compared the players' treatment by those hidden cameras to being put on display like zoo animals, watched, studied, broadcast without dignity or consent. Jessica Pegula, one of the most popular American players on tour and one of Coco's closest allies in the locker room, blasted the cameras as a gross, unacceptable invasion of privacy with zero ambiguity. Messages of solidarity poured in from players across the WTA and ATP tours, with many sharing their own stories of moments they had believed were private only to later discover they had been filmed. The backlash became so severe, so coordinated, and so sustained that the WTA itself was forced to step in, releasing a public statement supporting the players and formally demanding that Grand Slam tournaments establish and respect clear off-court boundaries for players going forward. What makes this entire situation so fascinating and so uniquely, uncomfortably modern is the way it holds a mirror up to the relationship between sporting institutions, media organizations, and the athletes who are simultaneously the heart of the industry and the most vulnerable people within it. The Australian Open, like every major sporting event in the world, is a commercial enterprise. It sells tickets, broadcast rights, sponsorships, and above all else, it sells drama. It sells stories. And in the age of social media, where a single clip can generate more conversation and more advertising revenue than an entire match, the temptation to capture every unguarded, unfiltered human moment, regardless of the cost to the individual, is apparently overwhelming.
Did you deal with the atmosphere, the energy, and the public?
Yeah, this is my first time playing a French player here, actually in this tournament that I can remember. Maybe during
up my whole summer, quite literally, and I'm trying to work up the courage to invite one of the cast members or two of the cast members to a match. But
one more thing to say, Hailey's a great competitor. So to the guy who made that comment.